established Rich coming right back at you. And today, we got to talk about the verdict in the Karmelo Anthony case. Karmelo Anthony has been found guilty in the murder of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, this verdict does not feel like something to celebrate. It feels like something to sit with, because at the center of all this noise, two families have been destroyed. Austin Metcalf went to a track meet and never came home. Karmelo Anthony went to that same track meet as a high school student, and now he is a convicted murderer facing the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. That is not a moment for people to get online and spike the football like they side won. This is a tragedy with a verdict attached to it. And what makes it so disturbing is how small the incident was before it became life-changing. A rain delay, a team tent, a dispute over who belonged there, a push, a knife, a stab wound, a dead teenager, and a guilty verdict. That's how fast life can break apart when young men don't know how to walk away from pride. And I know people have been arguing about this case from every angle. Some people believe Karmelo was defending himself. Some people believe Austin should have never put his hands on him. Some people believe race shaped how the case was talked about. And some people believe the verdict is the only way this could end. But for me, from the first time I really sat down with the facts, I could not get past one question. Why bring a knife to a fist fight moment? That is the thing that bothered me. I grew up in a time where we used to fight all the time. I'm not glorifying that. I'm not saying that it was right. And I'm not saying we should be raising kids to handle problems with their hands. But a lot of us had fights. Sometimes it was over pride. Sometimes it was over somebody talking too crazy. Sometimes it was just young men being young, dumb, and emotional in front of other people. Most of the time, somebody left embarrassed, somebody left mad, and somebody had to explain a busted lip when they got home. But they got home. That's the difference. Austin did not go back home. Karmelo would never go back to being a 17-year-old student again. That knife did not just end Austin's life. It ended Karmelo's childhood too. And that is why this case should scare every parent, every coach, every school, and every young man who thinks one heated moment can't ruin everything.
All right, we're going to pause coverage for a moment because we have some breaking news out of Texas this afternoon. Karmelo Anthony, the teen who was accused of stabbing and killing a fellow high school athlete, has now been indicted by a grand jury with first-degree murder.
17-year-old Austin Metcalf bled out in his brother's arms after the attack. Frisco, Texas police have said the incident stemmed from Metcalf asking Anthony to leave his team tent since he did not go to the same school. The Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis announced the indictment by the grand jury just moments ago.
The jury had to decide whether this was murder or self-defense. That was the whole case. The defense wanted the jury to see Karmelo as a teenager who got caught in a moment of fear. Their version is that he went under that tent to get out of the rain, ended up being confronted by students from another school, and panicked when the situation turned physical. When you look at it from that side, you can understand why some people felt he should have been found not guilty. If a young man is somewhere trying to stay dry, and then somebody bigger than him puts their hands on him, a lot of people are going to say he had a right to defend himself. And I'm not going to act like putting your hands on somebody is nothing. It does mean something. When you touch somebody in an argument, you are taking the situation to another level. You don't know how skilled that person is. You don't know what they have on them. You don't know what kind of day they having, what kind of mindset they in, or how fast they may react. So yes, there's a lesson there. Don't put your hands on people and expect to control how they respond. But this is where the case changes. Every wrong does not justify deadly force. A push can be wrong and still not make a stabbing right. The law does not say you can answer every physical confrontation with a weapon just because you feel disrespected or afraid. The jury looked at the moment and decided the knife went too far. That is the heart of the verdict. They did not have to believe that Austin was perfect. They did not have to believe that Karmelo felt nothing. They only had to decide whether deadly force was reasonable in that moment. And they said it wasn't. The prosecution painted Karmelo as a person who let the tent dispute become deadly. Their case is built around the idea that he was in a space he was asked to leave. He had a knife available, warned people what could happen if they touched him, and then used a level of force that Austin could not survive. That is a simple story for a jury to understand. And sometimes the simplest story is the strongest one in court. Because everybody understands a push. Everybody understands an argument getting heated. Everybody understands teenagers getting in each other's face. But when a knife comes out, the whole room feels different. A knife is just not another part of a fight. A knife is a life-ending tool when it ends up in the wrong place. And in this case, one stab was enough to take Austin Metcalf out of this world. That is why the prosecution's point hit so hard. You don't get to meet a shove with a stab. That line probably stayed with the jury because it cut through all the confusion. It didn't require a long legal explanation. It spoke to common sense. Common sense matters when 12 people are sitting in a room deciding whether a kid was defending himself or whether he went too far.
Earlier the defense called two teens who were at Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco when 17-year-old Austin Metcalf was fatally stabbed during a track meet in April last year. The defense is focused on witnesses testifying that Metcalf pushed Anthony before he stabbed him, and they asked one teen to demonstrate the type of push he saw. The defense also worked to contradict the prosecutor's contention that it was highly unusual for a student to go into a different high school's tent during a track meet. The two teens testified that unlike in football, it would not be unusual to stop by an opposing school's tent to say hi to someone they knew. And some teens with Centennial High School had sought shelter from the rain in a dugout earlier. Criminal defense attorney Bree West, who is here as a court observer, told us that the judge will ultimately decide what charges the jury can consider.
When you are in a trial, you are sort of charged with one offense. But during the course of the trial, different things come up, right? So maybe there's evidence now that a lesser offense was included. And if there is, then the jury deserves the ability to consider that as a potential sort of guilt or not guilt versus your charged offense, right? Because again, we know here in Texas, murder is a results-oriented crime, right? I intended to cause the result of death. If that's what you believe, beyond all reasonable doubt, then I'm guilty of murder. But if that's not what you believe, then what is something else that you may have heard during the course of the trial that could also be true? And in this particular case, if we're talking about manslaughter, then you may believe that I recklessly caused the death of another. And if that's what you believe, beyond all reasonable doubt, then I'm guilty of manslaughter. Or you may believe that I acted out of self-defense. I did it, you did it, it was intentional, all of the things, but there was a justification for it. And if that's the case, then I'm not guilty because I was acting out of self-defense.
This is where the internet argument had to meet real testimony. Online, people can pick sides in 5 minutes. They can take one clip, one post, one rumor, or one angle and build a whole opinion about it. But court is different. In court, the story gets slowed down. Who was in the tent? Who had authority to be there? What was said before the push? How did the knife come into the moment? What happened after Austin was stabbed? These are the details that takes the case out of the comment section and puts it in front of a jury. And from the verdict, it was clear the jury believed the state proved its case. They heard enough to reject self-defense. That does not mean they thought Austin handled it perfectly. It means that they did not believe Karmelo had the legal right to do what he did with that knife. That's the difference. And that is why this case is so painful to talk about. Because a lot of people want a clean hero or a clean villain. They want one side to be all wrong and the other side to be all right. Life doesn't always work that way. Austin could have made a bad decision by putting his hands on Karmelo. And Karmelo can still be guilty because his response was deadly. A person can be touched first and still go too far. A person can be scared and still commit a crime. A person can be young, have no history of trouble, and still make one decision that destroys multiple lives. This is what makes this case so hard. It does not fit neatly into the little box people like to put cases in. And that's why I keep coming back to the weapon. Without that knife, this case is probably not a national story. Without that knife, it may have been a school fight, a suspension, a parent meeting, maybe even some charges if it was bad enough. But Austin would probably be alive. And Karmelo would probably not be waiting to see how many years he's going to lose out of his future. That's the difference a weapon makes. And that is why we have to talk to young people about what they are carrying and why they are carrying it. Because a weapon can give a young man false confidence. It can make him stay in a situation he should walk away from. It can make him think he has control when he really doesn't. The moment gets loud, pride kicks in, people are watching, somebody touches somebody, and now that weapon becomes the worst decision in the room. That is what I want young men to understand. You may think you're carrying it for protection, but if you don't have the maturity to control your emotions, you may really be carrying your own future in the form of a prison sentence. That's real, and that's not just about Karmelo. This is about every young man who thinks a moment of disrespect is worth a lifetime of consequences.
Good evening. I'm Greg Willis, Collin County District Attorney. Today, justice was served. A year ago, when this senseless murder unfolded, I said that it had struck a deep nerve in Collin County and far beyond. I asked our community to ignore all the noise and instead be level-headed and patient as the process worked. And today, the process delivered accountability. We are grateful to this jury, and we are grateful that the good citizens of Collin County had an opportunity to weigh in on this case. I'm proud of the exceptional work of Bill Werski and our team of prosecutors, DA investigators, and victim advocates, and all the good and outstanding men and women of the Collin County District Attorney's Office. We thank all the parents and their brave kids who did the right thing. Despite the trauma of witnessing the senseless murder at a school track meet, they cooperated fully and testified truthfully. Their courage was essential to securing justice in this case. I'm especially honored to be joined here today by Jeff and Megan Metcalf and their son Hunter. Their strength and grace through this has been their strength and grace throughout this unimaginable journey has been inspiring. They won't be taking questions at this time, but their presence here speaks volumes about their commitment to seeking justice for Austin. I want to thank Judge Rhodes for presiding over this trial with fairness and efficiency. I want to thank Frisco PD for their investigation. I want to thank the Collin County Sheriff's Office led by Sheriff Skinner for providing the security for the courthouse. I want to thank all law enforcement throughout the county for making this a safe trial for everyone. This verdict sends a clear message. Violence like this won't be tolerated in our Collin County community, and we remain committed to protecting our schools and standing with victims and their families. Thank you.
Hi, Jesse. Some pretty breaking news to give you right now. The jury has sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years behind bars after finding him guilty of murder. I'm told that he is eligible for parole after he serves half his time. The jury had the option to give him as much as 99 years behind bars. But again, they have chosen to give him 35 years. And I do want to mention, we showed you those protests, a bunch of supporters out here. They've erupted again. Pretty shocking. This is a direct quote. I just heard one supporter say, quote, "Those twins," meaning the victim and his twin brother who were there at the time, are, quote, "domestic racist terrorists." So pretty unbelievable, Jesse.
All right, well, only 17 years and he's available for parole. Kind of seems soft. I would have given him the chair, but that's just me, Brooke. Thank you so much.
It showed us that they did not listen to the law. It showed clearly that a judge interfered in this process. That's right. It showed very clearly that a black boy was allowed, not one black soul on a jury, an all white jury convicted him in 2 to 3 hours. We know that they did not prove their case.
The jury has spoken. Karmelo Anthony is guilty of murder. Now the case moves to sentencing, and because he was 17 at the time, the death penalty is not on the table. But let's not act like that makes this light. He can still face years, decades, or even life in prison. That is a hard thing to say about somebody who was a teenager when this happened. But it is even harder to say Austin Metcalf is dead. That is the weight that cannot be moved out of the center of this story. Austin's family may feel like the verdict brought accountability, but accountability does not bring their son back. Karmelo's family may still believe he acted out of fear, but love does not erase a murder conviction. Everybody involved has to live with something that cannot be undone. And that's why this verdict feels less like a finish line and more like another chapter of pain. Now we have to address the race part because it was there from the beginning. Karmelo is black, Austin is white. The case immediately became bigger than the tent, bigger than the track meet, and bigger than the two boys involved. Black people started arguing about media coverage, jury makeup, black defendants, white victims, self-defense, racial sympathy, and whether or not the justice system could be trusted. As black people, we have every right to watch the system closely. We have seen too much history not to. We should pay attention to who gets charged, how they get covered, who sits on the jury, what language gets used, and whether the process was fair. But we also have to be honest enough to not let the race conversation swallow the facts. A 17-year-old was stabbed in the chest at a school event. The jury heard the self-defense argument and did not accept it. That is not something we can talk around. We can question the system and still admit to the weight of what happened. That is where the internet failed this case. Too many people use Austin and Karmelo to win arguments they already wanted to have. But Austin was not a talking point. Karmelo was not a hashtag. These were children. One is dead and one is convicted of killing him. That should make all of us slow down. And if I'm talking to young men watching this, the message is simple. Walk away from the moment that wants to take your life from you. I don't care if people laugh. I don't care if somebody calls you soft. I don't care if your pride is screaming at you to stand there and do something. Walk away if walking away means you get home. Because Soft gets to graduate. Soft gets to hug his mother. Soft gets to wake up in his own bed instead of a jail cell. Soft gets another chance. Austin don't get another chance. Karmelo may not have a normal life again. That is what pride can cost. And parents need to have this conversation too. We can't just tell our children to protect themselves without teaching them the difference between protection and panic. Real protection is not always about fighting. Sometimes real protection is knowing how to leave before the situation turns into something you can't fix. Karmelo's future is in the hands of the sentencing process. 2 families are left trying to survive something that started with a tent and a rain delay. That is insane to even say out loud. And that is why this story has to be more than just a news update. It has to be a warning. Do not carry something deadly in a moment you can walk away from. Do not let people watching you push you into a decision they won't have to pay for. And do not think that 1 second cannot become the second that changes everything. Because that is what happened here. Austin Metcalf is gone. Karmelo Anthony is guilty. And every young person watching should understand that some moments are not worth proving anything. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe. Establish Rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.